But see, I think it's fat. But see that, and that's an analogy I would draw. People who use or hack. I was just watching the documentary on the guy who originally hacked the PS3 and everything out, all the other things that he would just find interesting and be like, hey, you know what? I'm going to use this to do this. And it's like, and then Sony's like, you can't do that. Listen, you wrote the damn thing. You wrote the program. All he did was just tweak it or get it to make it do something else, and was it jailbreak or whatever it is you call it, the iPhone or whatever he did. And so that's kind of like sovereign citizens. That's kind of like people bringing something to someone's attention, because obviously then you got to write code to change that or to close those loopholes, to close those things. So if you don't like people will say, oh, Trump didn't pay that much in taxes. Hey, listen, Trump has people who are attorneys and accountants who look at the law. And if the law says you got to pay for this, this, and this, and this, and you can take deductions on this, 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 and this. Hey, man, I didn't write the rules. I'm just figuring out a way to use them to the best of my advantage. If you think that there's loopholes in there, or if you think that there's things that need to be tightened up or changed, again, call your legislator. Again, hack, but see, there is no legislation for software. So if it wasn't for hackers, if it wasn't for people who get creative, and I don't even like the word hacker. I just like, I guess, creative programmers. I prefer the word creative programmers. People who see something and they see things that I would never see. It's like looking like kind of like, that's why I love the movie The Matrix, because for me it's like I don't see, like I'll never see the numbers, I'll never see the streaming, I'll never see like where you see the Matrix. Like, so they could just look in there and they knew like, well, that's a good looking girl, that's a redhead. I'm like, how do you know it's all just a bunch of numbers? But to them, but yeah, because that's your medium, that's where your artistry comes from. And so for me, that's what the whole sovereign citizen thing should be, but it's been perverted into basically graffiti instead of art.
Do you think that YouTube has pushed the sovereign citizen a movement a little bit further?
No. The internet, this was back. You could find it on, you could just Google, you could just search for things before and find it. The problem is that all the law books that were not updated. And then, so things get updated now so quickly that it all started like really from just people misreading case law. They said, well, the Supreme Court says I have a right to travel. You do have a right to travel, bro. You do. If you want to go down to Ohio, go down to Ohio. You want to go check out some Sandusky, get some Cedar Point? Go. You can drive from Sandusky, Michigan to Sandusky, Ohio. Go ahead. You don't have to show anybody your papers, please. There's none of that. This isn't, Leningrad. This isn't, you don't have to do that. So, but you don't have the ability to choose an endless source of means of transportation. We're just talking about the right to travel at a basic, like you can use your feet. Go ahead. You can physically move your body from here to there.
You can force up yourself to Sandusky.
Yeah, exactly. People misread case law. Attorneys do it all the time. Like I'll read a brief and I'm like, and I'll be looking at that and they're like, well, according to this case, and I'm like, but counsel, did you read the rest of the opinion? I mean, well, no. And I'm like, well, doesn't that apply? And then they don't even know what I'm talking about. And I'm like, yeah, you know what? I see where this one's going. You're losing. And sometimes I'll always chalk it up to that they didn't intentionally try to mislead me. But attorneys do the same thing as what sovereign citizens do a lot of times. They just do it in a more eloquent form.
All right, moving on a little bit from the sovereign citizen. One of the biggest comments that I get a lot of my videos is, why didn't the judge hold him in contempt? So how do you balance holding someone in contempt and just brushing it off your shoulder and say, see you next month?
And that's a great question. That's a great question for everybody in the law tube community who's thinking about that. That's smart. The first thing I'm going to say is power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. I am always mindful of the fact, like, when I'm here, I got two amazing court officers, Officer Kemp, Officer Frisky, who are going to take down anybody who tries to come get me. Second, if you do actually get up on and jump over my bench, buddy, you're in the wrong judge's bench.
You saw that video, huh?
I did. And I grew up a poor hillbilly. I ain't never had an ass whooping, and it sure as hell isn't going to come because somebody jumped over my bench, because I know how to defend myself. And yeah, so it's other people don't. Problem is, you don't know when that kind of stuff's going to happen. But when it comes to contempt, you can't throw it around like Halloween candy. Like you can't just be like, well, you're pissing me off, contempt, because it's quite a powerful remedy. I mean, I'm literally going to deprive somebody of their liberty. I'm going to imprison them right now. Contempt of court is a misdemeanor, punishable by 90 days in jail and or up to $500 in fines. I am allowed to make action upon somebody for anything they do that was known as contempt. That means they literally are committing it right in my presence. I can make a ruling on it right now. I don't have to go to hearing. I can just say, look, what you're doing right there, you're in contempt. So I will always tell people, I will always warn people, I'm going to tell you what's going on. Like, hey, listen, we're going to use, this isn't Jerry Springer show. We're going to use an inside voice. Everyone's going to have a chance to speak. Everyone's going to have a chance to make their record. So a lot of times I will, like I told you before, I'll let them speak. I'll let them, because maybe they're just not eloquent enough to, like, what they're trying to say, they're not doing it well. Now, when you start yelling, I'm going to tell you, take it down. Right now, it's not the Jerry Springer show. We're not going to be yelling at each other. We're going to conduct ourselves in a civilized manner. And if we can't do that, I'm going to warn you. I'm going to warn you a second time. And then I'm going to hold you in contempt. But only if it's disruptive. And the reason that the contempt, it becomes contemptuous, is I'm also looking around the court. If I have other cases that now their activity is infringing upon their right to have their day in court, the other people's right to have their day in court. Because now you're prolonging it, you're making it like where I can't hear them. So like if you're in the gallery, back when I had people coming in here, I had an individual who, it was like their fourth time violating probation. And she was an older lady. I mean, I think in her 60s. It was on a larceny case. And I had given her, like, it's pretty easy to follow along, to get, some community service in here. Don't pick up any new charges, that kind of stuff. Hadn't done a community service, hadn't shown up to get drug tested, and it's like the fourth time. So this time I'm like, look, you know what? I'm telling you, you could be looking at 90 days in jail. I'm going to give you 3. I'm going to give you the weekend. You're going to come in. We're going to take you in here now. Today's Friday. You're going to spend the weekend here in the jail, and someone can come pick you up on Monday morning. And then I'm going to hold the rest of the 90 days in abeyance. I'm going to give you 90 days, but I'm only going to make you serve 3 right now. I'll hold the others in abeyance. If you finish the rest of your probation without incident, then I'll just go ahead and waive that. And she's like, no, I understand. And she gets up, and then the bailiff's going to take her out to where the holding cells are. And her daughter is over here, and I'm calling the next case. And her daughter is like, you effing A, this, as she's like getting up and walking out the door. And I'm like, oh, really? Okay. Officer Kemp, can you go retrieve that lady? So I said, you know what, you're going to go over here in the holding cell here, and I'm going to decide if we're going to do a contempt hearing or. So basically, it was basically like a timeout, because I came back from lunch. She came out of the door and was like, Judge, I'm really sorry. I really shouldn't have made it. Sometimes people just need to think. I go, listen, I'm not going to hold you in contempt. You can go. But other people are here to have their day in court. And when you're yelling, they don't want to hear obscenities. You're interfering with their constitutional right to have due process. So I kind of also weigh that into it. Like if you're disrupting, like if you want to come at me Sticks and stones can break my bones, but nails will never hurt me. I've always been a pudgy kind of guy. Super athletic, don't care. When I was a kid, they were like, "Hey, it's a double doughboy." Why? Because I had more doubles than I had singles. I mean, I could hit the heck out of the ball. You name it. Let's go. And I was the fastest lineman on the football team. I can run, man. I can run. So I mean, but I just carry a little extra weight, So I'm ready for a famine. If he wants to come in, I'm good. So I will outlast the rest in a zombie apocalypse. So I don't care. You want to call me like, "Oh, you're fat." Oh wow, really? Am I? Oh my gosh. Okay. I've had people do that on the video, like when they're in the jail cell. You effing this and that and fat blah 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 judge, but I'm like, whatever, bud. Like it just rolls out because I don't care. Like, listen, I get it, you're venting. I get it. But if you start disrupting other people's right to have a trial, if you're disrupting other people's ability to hear the cases when I'm trying to like read somebody their rights and you're making noise over here, yapping, 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 I'm going to tell you, knock it off right now. If you don't, I'm going to hold you to contempt of court. And I tell them, this person has a right to hear all of their rights or constitutional rights. I'm trying to go over that with them, and you're making noise interfering with that. You want to keep that up, you're going to be held in contempt. And I'll tell them that. I'll tell them one time. And if it happens again, boom, that's it. So for me, it's really about, if you want to come at me, say whatever you want. Listen, I really don't care. I could care less about what your opinion is of me. Especially if it's negative. If it's positive, well, hey, it's cool. Let's be friends. Let's talk. But let's talk. You're thinking the wrong thing, and you're like, oh, this judge is this and that. I'm like, no, but that's not what it's about. Oh, okay. So, because I even have some sovereign citizens who will even say, I appreciate the fact that you are respectful to me, and because that's my job. Like I shouldn't be like, don't thank me for doing my job. I mean, that's what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to treat litigants with respect. That's what I try to do. And I'll give them the opportunity, but I guess the line gets crossed for me is when you start disrupting, making it disruptive for me to conduct proceedings for everybody else. Like if you're the last case, whatever, I'll give you, go ahead, go ahead and talk. Let's go. Say whatever it is you're going to say. Because you're not, the only thing you're blocking is you're blocking me from getting to a sandwich that I'm about to have at lunch here when we're done. So if that's the case, then I guess the threat level, I guess if you want to call it, really, is that. And it's too, I just think judges should not be too quick to get to right to contempt level. Don't go to DEFCON 4 like right now. Like really, because I mean, give them a warning, see what's going on. Some people who are like actually like putting hands on people, yeah, that's just go right now, take care of it. But it's a tightrope to walk because the judicial system only works if the people have trust in the judicial system. And if all they think is that we're just, oh, you just do whatever you want and you don't care, it's just about making money and try, it's not. It's about, for me, for sure, it's just not. And so I'm going to make sure that I temper all of my decision making with that in mind. Like it's right there at the forefront of everything that I'm thinking about. Am I being fair? Am I giving someone the opportunity to be heard? But at the same time, are they messing with anybody else's opportunity to be heard? And so I guess sometimes when they're like, hey, this, and I guess sometimes you kind of like, it's kind of like when you have a kid, each one of your kids, you have kids?
Yeah, I have two.
Two. Each one of them is probably different. Like, how one kid will like do, or like, like, oh, I know this one. If they want something, they're probably going to ask me first, or maybe they're going to ask their mom first. Or like you just know, like that's their MO. You're like, okay, I see where you're coming. Like, so sometimes when you have a litigant who you've already had before you, who is like of a certain nature, you already kind of know. So if you weren't smart enough to like make that your last case so that it doesn't interrupt so that it doesn't interrupt the rest of the proceedings, then come on, work your docket a little bit better. I mean, so I mean but that's really what it boils down to for me anyway. For me. You just don't want to be abusive with it. You don't want to be too quick to, it's kind of like they always say, if you don't pull out your gun unless you're going to use it.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Kind of a random question I just thought of. Have you ever played Sobsit Bingo?
Have I ever played that? That is no. I haven't, but I'm sure that they could make a drinking game that would be very similar.
Yeah, it's fun. There's a few law tubers out there that will automate some cards and have their followers that are watching, just check them off as they go. Anyways, okay, moving on to the last question. I know you're busy. I know you got a sandwich to get to for lunch before your case. If you could snap your fingers and make one change to the judicial process, what would it be?
Hmm. Kind of like Judge Thanos just kind of puts the glove on. Hey. Yeah. You know what? I really enjoyed our conversation. I'd like to hear more about your background, just more about you. So how about, and I know you probably want to, talk to other people and other judges and things like that. I would be interested in having more conversations with you.
Oh yeah, absolutely, for sure. Maybe
Yeah.
maybe next time you can come up on my YouTube channel, step into my arena.
Yeah, no, for sure. So that's a great question. And one that in the same vein as if I had ever found Aladdin's lamp, you don't just make that impulsive wish right off the bat. I mean, because I can make an easy wish and say, I wish Mike Tinney wins the election next year so he becomes my benchmate. That would be that would be like good for the community and good for me.